I'm Liam, 34 years old. My life is rooted here in the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio, inside a small, unassuming house. Every autumn, the streets outside are buried in a carpet of gold. The place has character. Old brick that has seen decades of weather and a sturdy wooden fence that I put up with my own two hands just last summer. I like knowing I built something that will last. By trade, I'm a plumber. It's not a fancy profession, I know, but it's honest work that keeps me comfortable, covers all my expenses, and lets me tuck something away. Anyone who sees me probably just registers a typical guy in a flannel shirt and work boots caked with mud, climbing out of the old pickup I keep parked in the driveway. It's a simple picture, and I'm fine with that. There's a real peace in a life that's quiet and doesn't ask for much attention. But here's the part no one sees. Over the last decade, I've been carefully managing an investment portfolio. The balance in that account has quietly grown into the millions. It's a secret I hold close, a weight and a freedom that's entirely my own. Not even my family knows about it. Right now, it's late fall. The air has that distinct sharp chill, and the breeze carries the smell of cinnamon and pumpkin from the local bakeries. You can feel it everywhere. Thanksgiving is only a few days out. This is the one time of year I truly live for. Not for the turkey or the holiday buzz, but for the simple fact that it brings us all together. At least, that's how it always used to feel. This year, though, a knot of unease has been tightening in my gut. It's that quiet certainty you get right before a bad storm hits, when the air goes still and heavy even though the sky looks clear. I'm sunk into the old sofa here in my living room, letting the warm orange light from the table lamp paint the wall. The beer in my hand is cold, sweating onto my fingers. On the table in front of me sits a freshly wrapped gift box. Inside is a wool scarf for my mom and a book on baseball history for my dad. I'd spent the better part of a week tracking them down, determined to make this year's gathering feel perfect. In my head, I could already see the whole family crowded around the dinner table. I could hear the laughter, see the candlelight dancing on everyone's faces as we traded stories about the old days. But then I dialed Mom's number just to check what time I should head over for Thanksgiving. The sound of her voice when she answered, though, sent a cold dread washing right over me. "Liam, honey." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, followed by a sound that was too light, too forced. She was weighing every single word. "This year," she started, then stopped. Maybe it's best if you don't come over." The words hit me like a physical blow. The phone felt slick in my tightening grip. "What are you talking about?" I managed to ask, my own voice sounding distant. "I have everything ready. I got the gifts." "It's not that we don't want you here," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. I could practically hear her flinching. "It's just, well, Owen is bringing his new girlfriend to meet everyone, and he wants the day to be special." She trailed off, leaving the rest unsaid. "He just wants it to be a smaller group, you know, to make sure everything is perfect." Perfect. That one word rang in my ears, sharp and ugly. My perfect family. A vice tightened around my chest, but I fought to keep my voice level. "So Owen doesn't want me there? Is that what this is?" "Oh no, honey, not exactly," she stammered, desperate to smooth it over. "You know how Owen gets. He wants the whole evening to be very formal and, well, with your job being manual labor and how you dress so casually." Her voice dropped to a near whisper. "I'm just worried you would feel out of place." Out of place. A short, harsh laugh escaped my lips. It was the only sound I could make. I wanted to scream into the phone. I wanted to tell her how I'd spent the last month counting down the days. How I'd driven to 3 different shops to find that one specific scarf she'd pointed out once. I wanted to tell Dad my story about the client whose plumbing job led me to a hidden cellar filled with vintage wine. I had it all planned. but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just nodded, a useless gesture over the phone. "I get it," I said quietly. "Have a good time." The moment the call disconnected, the silence in the room became immense. I just sat there, my eyes fixed on the gift box on the table. Suddenly, the air felt thick and suffocating, even with the window open and the cool autumn breeze drifting in. It wasn't anger, not really. It was a profound emptiness, a feeling of being hollowed out. It was like I'd been neatly edited out of the one picture I always believed I was a part of. To really understand why this cut so deep, you need to know about my family. I grew up in a comfortable middle-class home right here in Cleveland, in a 2-story house with a big backyard full of apple trees. My dad, David, spent his whole career working for the railroad. Now he's retired, and he fills his days with books and baseball games. My mom, Sarah, was an elementary school teacher, and she was the one who always made sure we held on to our family traditions, from Sunday dinners to the big holidays like Thanksgiving. They're good people, they really are, but they have one massive blind spot, and his name is Owen. Owen is my younger brother, 5 years my junior, just turned 29. He is and always has been the absolute pride and joy of my parents. From the moment he was born, Owen was the sun our family orbited around. He's got that kind of easy movie star charm. Golden hair, a smile that lights up a room, and a gift for making anyone he talks to feel like the most important person in the world. He sailed through school, always at the top of his class, and now he's a lawyer at some big-shot firm downtown. He lives in a sleek high-rise apartment, drives a BMW, and loves to talk about his trips to far-flung places and the exclusive parties he gets invited to. But there's a side to him our parents refuse to see. The truth is, Owen is a disaster with money. He burns through cash like it's nothing, buying things he doesn't need just to keep up appearances, constantly living a lifestyle he can't actually afford. I'm the complete opposite. I was never the one who needed to be seen. My pleasures are simple: a black coffee first thing in the morning, an afternoon spent under the hood of my truck in the garage, a quiet night with a book about stock market trends. My work as a plumber doesn't earn me any gasps of admiration at dinner parties, but it's my own and I'm proud of it. I fix things for people, real tangible problems, from a simple leaky faucet to a whole building's water system. I don't need a spotlight or a round of applause, but damn, sometimes I just wish my parents would look at me with half the adoration they give Owen. I felt the imbalance my whole life. Owen got the brand new clothes and was signed up for every advanced program at school. I got our cousins' hand-me-downs and was told, "You're the older one, Liam. You can handle it." The day I told them I wasn't going to college, that I wanted to learn a trade instead, they looked at me like I had just set my own future on fire. "Liam, you're so smart," my mom said to me once, her voice thick with disappointment. "You could have done anything. Why aren't you doing something bigger with your life?" Meanwhile, when Owen got his acceptance letter to law school, you would have thought he'd single-handedly discovered a cure for cancer. I tried not to let it bother me, or maybe I just got really good at telling myself it didn't. I found my own satisfaction in my work. In those quiet, early mornings, driving through the city streets as the sun came up, in the relief on a client's face, in the simple gesture of a cold glass of water and a shared story. And I had my secret. It was something that my brother, for all his swagger and condescension, could never in a million years have guessed. That secret started 10 years ago, the day I met Julia. I was just wrapping up a big job, overhauling the entire plumbing system for a small financial services office in downtown Cleveland. Julia was working there, a young woman of about 25. She had her brown hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she had these incredibly sharp eyes and a smile that completely knocked me off my feet. I was wiping sweat from my forehead after a long, hard day, and she brought me a cup of coffee. We just started talking. It wasn't flirting, not at first. It was just a real conversation about our lives, our ambitions, the things that made us tick. Julia was a financial advisor, but she wasn't one of those slick types who talked down to you. When she spoke about investing, it was like she was weaving a fascinating story, explaining it with a passion and simplicity that even a plumber like me could follow. She was the one who convinced me that anyone could build real wealth as long as they had patience and a willingness to learn. "You don't have to be rich to start, Liam," she told me, her eyes shining with conviction. "You just have to start." So I did. I started saving every spare dollar I could. I read everything I could get my hands on about stocks, index funds, and even a little bit of real estate. Julia was my guide, not because she was getting a cut, but because she genuinely seemed to believe in me. She told me I had a long-term perspective, a quality she said was surprisingly rare, even among her wealthiest clients. And over the next 10 years, that small seed of an investment grew. It went from a few $1,000s to a 7-figure portfolio. But I never changed my life. I didn't run out and buy a sports car or a mansion. I stayed right here in my little house, kept driving my old truck, and held that secret tight to my chest. Julia was the only person who knew the truth, and she understood completely when I told her I didn't want my family to know. But now, sitting here in the crushing silence of my living room, staring at that useless gift box, I feel that secret pressing down on me. Owen, my little brother, the golden child my parents worship, the brilliant star they never stop bragging about, has just kicked me out of Thanksgiving. And for what? Because I don't fit the picture he wants to paint for his new girlfriend. It would be funny if it didn't hurt so much, because I know exactly who she is. I've seen her plastered all over Owen's social media for months now. There are pictures of them in fancy restaurants, on weekend trips, Owen's smug face grinning next to a woman with brown hair pulled back and those same sharp, intelligent eyes. The instant I saw that first picture, I knew it was Julia, my financial advisor. The shock of it was like ice water in my veins, but I didn't say a word to Owen. I couldn't risk him finding out about my investments. I do remember the day I finally sent Julia a text. A few weeks after that first photo of her and my brother appeared online, I kept the message short. "Julia, you're dating my brother." Her reply came back almost instantly, her voice just as sharp and direct in text as it was in person. "Oh, really? Small world. Should I bring it up with Owen?" My fingers flew across the screen. I begged her to keep it quiet. I explained that I didn't want my family to know about my money. More than that, I didn't want them to start looking at me differently, to see me only through the lens of what I was worth. I just wanted them to love me for being Liam, not for a number in a bank account. And now this. Now my own mother was telling me that Owen didn't want me at Thanksgiving because my presence, my life, my job would embarrass him. It would make him feel ashamed. The initial shock was fading, replaced by a deep, weary ache. I was just so tired of always being the one who was pushed aside, the one who had to swallow his pride and step back just to keep the family from falling apart. A cold thought crept into my mind. I wondered if Julia would say anything about me at that perfect little dinner, or would she keep her promise and pretend I didn't even exist? A small, bitter part of me hoped she would say something. I wanted my family to know just for a second that I wasn't the failure Owen once called me behind my back. But a much larger part of me, the part that had gotten me this far, just wanted to live my own life on my own terms, without feeling like I had to prove a single thing to any of them. Thanksgiving Day came and went in a blur of silence. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't even turn on the TV or put on the festive music I usually loved. Instead, I retreated to the garage, tightening bolts on my old pickup, trying to busy my hands enough to quiet my mind. It didn't work. Every time I stopped, even for a moment, the picture would flash through my head. My family, all of them, gathered around the dining room table. I could see my dad roaring with laughter at one of Owen's stories, my mom fussing over the turkey, and Julia, with her sharp, knowing eyes, sitting right there in the middle of it all, surrounded by people who had no idea who I really was. I couldn't help but wonder what was going through her mind. She knew the whole story. She knew about the countless hours I'd spent hunched over my laptop, studying market trends. She knew about the disciplined investments that had transformed a simple plumber into a quiet millionaire. But she was also dating my brother, a man who, as far as I could tell, was completely obsessed with appearances and fundamentally incapable of seeing value in anyone but himself. I tried to push the thoughts away. I kept telling myself I didn't need their acceptance, that I had forged my own path without Owen's dazzling spotlight or my parents' seal of approval. But underneath it all, a deep, slow, burning pain lingered. I hated to admit it, even to myself, but being cast out of the one holiday I had always held sacred. Being told I wasn't good enough because of my job and my simple life. It felt like I had been wiped from my own family's history. 2 days after the silent Thanksgiving had passed, I was sitting in my living room nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. When my phone buzzed on the table, Julia's name flashed across the screen. My heart didn't leap with excitement. It began to thud with a heavy, sinking premonition. I just knew, with absolute certainty, that this call was about to change everything. I drew in a long, slow breath and swiped to answer. Julia's voice came through the speaker, quiet but charged with an emotion I couldn't place. "Liam, it's me," she said. Her voice was shaking just slightly, like she was trying to keep it under control. I need to talk to you about Thanksgiving and... I'm so sorry." I sat up straight, a frown creasing my forehead as I set my coffee cup down on the table. "Sorry for what, Julia? What's going on?" She let out a shaky sigh. For a second, I could picture her perfectly, probably sitting in her little office in downtown Cleveland, surrounded by neat stacks of files, with the afternoon light streaming through the window and catching in her brown hair. "I broke my promise," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I told them, Liam. I told your family about you, about the investments, about everything you've done." Her next words came out in a rush. "I just couldn't keep quiet anymore, not after what I heard them say about you." Each word landed like a fist to my gut. I felt the air leave my lungs. I didn't know what to feel. Was I furious that she'd betrayed my confidence? Or was I relieved that the secret was finally out in the open? "Hold on, Julia," I said, struggling to keep my voice from shaking. "What did they say? What happened over there?" There was a pause on her end, as if she were collecting her thoughts, trying to find the right place to start. When she finally began to speak, every word she uttered was like a fresh twist of a knife. But at the same time, it was like a beam of light finally cutting through the suffocating darkness I'd been living in. "Owen wasn't just bragging about himself," Julia said, her voice dripping with contempt. "He started talking about you, Liam, and it wasn't nice. He called you a loser. He said you were just a plumber with no ambition, that you were a total embarrassment to the family, and that you would never amount to anything." He was laughing, like it was the funniest joke in the world. She took a sharp breath. "And your parents, they didn't say a word to stop him. Your mom actually nodded along and said something about how you'd chosen the wrong path in life. Your dad just sat there silent. He didn't object." My knuckles went white as I gripped the phone. I could feel a hot, volcanic rage building inside me. I always knew Owen looked down on me, but hearing Julia lay it all out like that, hearing how he had turned me into a joke for his own amusement on Thanksgiving, it was a new level of betrayal. "What else?" I asked, my voice raw. "What else did they say?" Julia let out another heavy sigh. "Owen just kept digging in. He said you were the reason the family couldn't look good in front of his friends. He said you didn't deserve an invitation, that having you there would have ruined the whole mood." Her voice hardened. And then your mom said, "Yes, maybe it's for the best. Liam will understand. I was just sitting there, Liam, listening to all this, and I felt like I was going to come out of my skin. I couldn't believe they were talking about you that way, especially knowing what I know." I squeezed my eyes shut, focusing on the simple act of breathing in and out. "So what did you do?" "I wasn't going to say anything," Julia confessed, her voice filled with regret. "I gave you my word that I'd keep your secret, but he just wouldn't stop. And when your parents started agreeing with him, I just snapped." "I stood up," she said, her voice gaining strength, "right in the middle of dinner, and I said, 'You are all completely wrong about Liam. He is not a loser. He is one of the most intelligent and disciplined people I have ever met.'" I could see it all so clearly. Julia, her eyes flashing, her voice cutting through the smug atmosphere of the dining room as my family stared, mouths agape. She went on, "I told them everything. I told them you had built a multi-million-dollar investment portfolio from nothing. I named your assets, the tech stocks, the index funds, the properties. I told them you did it all through sheer patience and intelligence, all while working a job you're actually proud of. I said you don't need to show off like Owen does because you have real self-worth." She paused, then added, "And then I told them I was ashamed to be sitting at their table listening to them tear you down while not a single one of them had the decency to defend you." A strange sound escaped my throat, half laugh, half sob. It was a mix of pure shock and a deep, lingering bitterness. "Julia," I breathed, "you actually said all of that?" "That and more," she replied, and for the first time I could hear the hint of a smile in her voice. "I told them you were the only person in that entire family I genuinely respected," she said, her voice full of conviction. "That you don't live your life trying to impress other people. You live it building something real." She let out a small, dry laugh. Owen was floored, Liam. He literally dropped his wine glass. "Your mom started stammering, trying to ask how I could possibly know all this, but I didn't give her an answer. I just apologized for disrupting their dinner and walked out. I couldn't stand to be in that room for one more second." I collapsed back onto the sofa, my head spinning. It felt like the entire world had just tilted on its axis. Julia had done the one thing I never had the courage to do. She had stood up to my family. She had laid bare the truth I had guarded for a decade. A part of me, the part that hated losing control, wanted to be angry with her for breaking her promise. But a much larger part of me was flooded with a profound sense of gratitude. Finally, someone had truly seen me. Not just Liam the plumber, but Liam the man, the one who had quietly, patiently built a life he could be proud of. "Liam," Julia said, her tone shifting, growing serious again. "I am so sorry for telling them without asking you first. But I couldn't just sit there and let them treat you that way. You deserve their respect and—" She hesitated. "I need to warn you. After what happened, they're probably going to come looking for you. And not because they feel bad, Liam. It's because they know you have money now. Owen was texting me right after I left, asking about your portfolio. He wanted to know where your money was, how you did it. I didn't tell him anything else, but you need to be ready for them." I nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see me. "Thank you, Julia," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for standing up for me, and thank you for seeing me." She laughed, a soft, tired sound. "You don't have to thank me, Liam. You're the one who did the work. I just told them the truth." After we hung up, I stayed on the sofa for a long time, just staring out the window. The golden leaves were still drifting down from the trees, but they didn't look sad anymore. Instead, I felt a tiny flame flicker to life deep inside my chest. It wasn't anger. It was resolve. Julia had kicked open a door I had kept bolted shut for a decade, and I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that nothing would ever be the same again. In the days after that phone call, I did my best to stick to my routine. I was still up at 5 every morning, still brewing my black coffee, still driving my old pickup to plumbing jobs all over Cleveland. The work was a blessing. It gave me something to focus on, a way to keep from replaying Julia's words and the image of my family laughing at me over their Thanksgiving dinner. But every evening when I sat down to eat alone in the quiet of my little house, the questions would come rushing back. Were my parents really truly ashamed of me? Did Owen ever once think of me as his brother, or was I just someone to be stepped on and left behind? And now that the secret was out, now that they knew about the money, what were they going to do? Julia's warning echoed in my mind. She told me they would come looking for me, not with apologies, but with their hands out. A part of me refused to believe it. I wanted to hold on to the idea that my parents, even with all their favoritism toward Owen, still loved me on some fundamental level. I wanted to believe that Owen, for all his arrogance and greed, had at least a flicker of a conscience. But in the quiet, honest corners of my mind, I knew Julia was right. And sure enough, just 5 days after Thanksgiving, her prediction came true. I was out in the garage that afternoon, my hands black with grease from rotating the tires on my truck. I heard a car engine cut out on the street, and when I wiped my hands on a rag and stepped outside, my stomach dropped. Owen's sleek black BMW was parked right at my curb. The driver's side door opened, but it wasn't just Owen who got out. My parents were with him. Mom was wearing the green sweater she always pulled out in the fall, and Dad had on his faded old baseball cap. And there was Owen, of course, looking like he'd just stepped out of a magazine in an expensive suit, not a single hair out of place. The three of them just stood there on the sidewalk looking at me. I felt like an actor who had just been shoved onto a stage without ever seeing the script. "Liam," my mom called out, her voice filled with a syrupy warmth I hadn't heard directed at me in years. She rushed toward me, her arms open as if she was about to sweep me into a hug, but I took a half step back without even thinking. She stopped, her smile wavering for just a second. "Are you all right? We've been so worried about you." My brow furrowed. I looked from my mom to my dad and then to Owen, who was lounging against his car door with his hands shoved in his pockets. He had that familiar, infuriating half smirk on his face, the one that always meant he was feeling particularly pleased with himself. "Worried about me?" I asked, my voice flat. "Why the sudden interest? I thought you all just had a perfect Thanksgiving." My dad cleared his throat and took a step forward, playing his usual role of peacemaker. "Liam, come on, don't be like that. We just wanted to stop by, see how you are. Talk. It's been a while since we all got together as a family." A harsh, bitter laugh escaped my lips. "A while? You mean since you all decided I wasn't good enough to be invited to Thanksgiving because I might embarrass Owen?" I stared directly at my brother, and for the first time all afternoon I saw that smug look on his face flicker. It was only for a split second, then he was back, that confident mask snapping into place as he pushed off the car and clapped a hand on my shoulder like we were the best of friends. "Hey, come on, man, don't be like that," Owen said, his voice as slick and smooth as oil. "That whole Thanksgiving thing was just a big misunderstanding. You know how I get. I can be a little over the top sometimes, but you're my brother. I would never want to hurt your feelings." I shrugged his hand off my shoulder, a hot wave of fury washing over me. "A misunderstanding?" I repeated, my voice coming out colder and harder than I'd intended. "So you calling me a loser, telling everyone I'm an embarrassment to the family right in front of your new girlfriend? That was just a misunderstanding? Or was that you just being over the top?" Owen's eyes widened. He clearly hadn't expected me to know exactly what he'd said. My mom rushed to intervene, her voice shrill and panicked. "Liam, why would you say such a thing? We never said any of that. That girl, Julia, she must have gotten it all wrong. What did she tell you?" I stared right at my mother, and for the first time in my life, I saw past the maternal concern. I saw the lie. Julia had described the scene in perfect, excruciating detail. She told me how my own mother had nodded in agreement while Owen tore me to shreds, how she'd lamented that I'd chosen the wrong path. But here she was, standing in my front yard, pretending she hadn't been a part of it at all. I felt a scream building in my throat, a primal urge to demand why I was always the one they threw away. But I choked it down. Julia didn't misunderstand a thing, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. She just told me the truth. My dad sighed, rubbing his jaw like he was trying to figure out how to change the subject. Come on now, Liam, let's not dwell on the past. We came here to make things right. You're my son. You're Owen's brother. We're a family. Families are supposed to stick together. I looked at the three of them, my father, my mother, my brother. They were arranged in my driveway like a postcard of a happy family reunion, but I could see the fractures, the hairline cracks running through the whole facade. They weren't here because they felt guilty. They were here because of what Julia had told them. They were here for my money. She had been right all along. They didn't see me. They saw a walking, talking bank account. My mom suggested we all go inside to talk. And even though every instinct I had screamed no, I found myself nodding. Not because I was ready to forgive them, but because I suddenly, morbidly, wanted to see just how far they were willing to take this. We all trooped into the living room where the orange glow from the table lamp was still painting the walls. The gift box I'd wrapped for Thanksgiving was still sitting right where I'd left it, a silent monument to a holiday that never was. My mom settled onto the sofa, my dad hovered by the window, and Owen naturally made himself comfortable in my armchair, crossing his legs like he owned the place. Liam, my mom began, her voice soft and pleading. I know you're still upset about Thanksgiving, but you have to understand, we just wanted everything to be perfect for Owen when he introduced Julia. She's such a lovely girl, and Owen, well, he has very high hopes for this relationship. I folded my arms across my chest and leaned against the doorframe, saying nothing. I was going to let them play this out. My mom took my silence as an invitation to continue, her voice gaining an excited edge. But now we know you've been doing such incredible things, Julia told us. She said you have a lot of money now, is that true? She said you've invested in stocks and real estate. I never knew you were so talented, Liam. We're so proud of you. Proud. The word bounced around the inside of my skull, a hollow, mocking echo. I stared into my mother's eyes, searching for even a flicker of genuine feeling. But all I found was a greedy, grasping curiosity. Proud? I asked, my voice dangerously level. You weren't proud of me when I was fixing pipes for our neighbors. You weren't proud when I was just living an honest life, but now that you've heard I have money, suddenly you're proud? My mom flinched, her lips thinning into a tight line. That's not what I meant, Liam, Owen cut her off, his voice taking on that smooth, persuasive tone he probably used in the courtroom. Listen, man, we're not here to argue. You've obviously done really well for yourself. Seriously, I'm impressed. But just think, if you're that good at this stuff, why not help out your family a little? I've got some huge investment opportunities coming up, but I'm a little short on capital. If you're interested, we could partner up. You provide the funding, I'll handle the management, and we both make a killing. It would be a great way to bring the family back together. I stared at my brother, and in that moment I saw him with perfect, horrifying clarity. He wasn't just arrogant and selfish. He was a parasite. He wasn't here to make amends. He was here to use me. My mind flashed back through the years, all the times I'd given up my toys for him when we were kids, the extra shifts I'd worked to help with his college tuition, the countless times I'd bitten my tongue while he belittled and mocked me. But I wasn't that same Liam anymore. No deal, I said. My voice was rock steady, without a trace of doubt. Owen's brow furrowed. He wasn't used to hearing the word no. "Come on, don't be so selfish," he whined. "Family is supposed to come first, right?" Before I could even answer, my dad stepped forward, holding up a hand as if to silence me. "Liam, that's enough. Owen is just trying to make an effort here. You need to learn how to forgive." "Forgive?" I repeated, turning my gaze on my father. "You want me to forgive being kicked out of my own family's Thanksgiving? To forgive being called a loser in front of his girlfriend? To forgive the fact that you and Mom stood by and let it happen, that you never once, not in my entire life, stood up for me?" The room plunged into a heavy silence. My mom bowed her head, twisting a tissue in her hands. My dad turned to stare out the window. Owen, however, shot to his feet, his face red and blotchy with rage. He pointed a trembling finger at me. "Who the hell do you think you are, Liam? You get lucky with some dirty stock market money and suddenly you think you're better than us? You're still just a plumber living in this pathetic little house. Don't you dare stand there and judge us." I didn't even flinch. I looked my brother straight in the eye, and the rage I'd been feeling was gone, replaced by a profound, bone-deep weariness. "You're right, Owen," I said, my voice calm. "I am a plumber, and I do live in this house, but I'm proud of what I have because I built it all myself without hurting anyone to get it. What about you? What do you really have besides the shiny things you show off on the internet? A job you hate, a life you can't afford?" Owen's mouth opened, but no words came out. I turned to my parents, my voice softening slightly, but losing none of its resolve. "I love you both," I said, and I meant it. I really do. But I can't do this anymore. I just wanted a family, a real one. But you only showed up on my doorstep when you thought you could get something from me. If you can't love me for who I am, for just being Liam, then I have to be done. I need to start living my life for myself." My mom started to cry then, but I couldn't tell if her tears were for me or for the money she now knew she would never get. My dad just shook his head and muttered something under his breath about me being stubborn. Owen clenched his fists, spun on his heel, and stormed toward the door. "You're going to regret this, Liam," he snarled, his voice thick with venom. "You might think you've won something here today, but all you're doing is pushing everyone away." And then they were gone. I stood there alone in the living room, listening to the sound of the BMW's engine fade into the distance until all I could hear was the whisper of dry leaves skittering across the pavement outside. I sank onto the sofa and looked at the gift box still sitting on the table, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a strange, quiet sense of peace settle over me. My heart was broken. There was no denying that, but for the first time in my entire life, I also felt completely and utterly free. I was no longer chained to my family's expectations, no longer crushed under the weight of their judgment. I closed my eyes, took a long, slow breath, and made myself a promise. I would not go back. Not ever. The next morning, I went back to work. I fixed a leaky pipe for an old woman over on Maple Avenue, then drove downtown to check on the water system for a small office building. The familiar rhythm of my job kept my hands busy, but my thoughts kept returning to Julia. She had broken her promise to me, yes, but she had done it to defend me. She had seen me, really seen me, in a way my own family never had. I found myself wondering how she was, if she was regretting the bomb she'd dropped at Owen's perfect dinner party. And then, that evening, as if she had heard my thoughts, my phone buzzed. "Liam, it's me." Julia's voice was soft, but there was an underlying strength to it. "Are you okay?" I heard from Owen. "He told me your family went to your house." I sank onto the sofa, the phone clutched tight in my hand. "I'm okay, I think," I said. "They came over just like you said they would." But it wasn't to apologize. They wanted money, Julia. Owen started talking about some investment partnership, and my parents kept going on about how family comes first. I told them all to get out. I heard Julia let out a long sigh on the other end of the line. I could almost see her shaking her head, her brown ponytail swinging. I'm not surprised. Owen never changes, and that's actually why I'm calling. I wanted you to be the first to know. I broke up with him. The word struck me like a jolt of electricity. It wasn't that I hadn't seen it coming, but I hadn't expected it to happen so soon. You broke up with him? When, why? She laughed, a tired, humorless sound. Yesterday, I can't be with someone like that, Liam. He's completely self-absorbed. All he cares about is looking good and using people to get what he wants. I saw the way he treated you, the things he said about you behind your back. And yesterday, when he called me after leaving your house, there wasn't a shred of remorse in his voice. No apology, nothing. And I knew right then that I could never build a life with a man like that. I was quiet for a long moment, not because I was at a loss for words, but because I was trying to absorb what she was telling me. Julia, the sharp, brilliant woman who had helped me secure my future, had walked away from my brother. She hadn't done it just for herself. She had done it because of what she believed in. Are you sure? I asked, my voice coming out a little rough. I mean, Owen is exactly the kind of guy a lot of women want. Big job, fancy car, all the right clothes. Julia laughed, and this time it was a genuine warm sound that made something inside me stir. Liam, you really think I care about any of that? I'm a financial advisor. I see guys like Owen every single day, living on credit, drowning in debt, buying attention with money they don't actually have. But you're different. You're real. You work hard, you're proud of what you do, and you don't feel the need to prove a single thing to anyone. That's what I respect. My heart started to beat a little faster, not because I was letting my imagination run away with me, but because for the first time in my entire life, I felt completely and totally seen. Not for the number in my bank account, but for the man I actually was. Thank you, Julia, I said, my voice softening. I don't know what else to say. Don't say anything, she replied quickly. But Omud, if you're not busy, maybe you could meet me for coffee tomorrow. At that little place on Grant Street, I'd like to talk. Not about stocks or Owen, just talk. A smile spread across my face, the first genuine one I'd felt in what seemed like forever. Yeah, I said. I'd like that. That meeting at the coffee shop felt like a turning point. The place was tucked away on a quiet corner with big glass windows looking out onto the street. Julia was already there when I arrived, sitting at a small table with a latte, wearing a simple gray sweater, her hair pulled back like always. When I walked in, she glanced up and smiled, and it was like the whole room suddenly got a little warmer. We talked for hours. At first, it was about little things, how surprisingly good the sandwiches were there, the time I completely messed up a plumbing job and had to go back to the client's house with a box of apology donuts. But as the afternoon wore on, the conversation drifted into deeper waters. She told me about her dream of one day opening her own financial advisory firm, one that would focus on helping ordinary people, people like me, build secure futures for themselves. I found myself telling her about the late nights I'd spent poring over investment books, about the quiet pride I felt watching my portfolio grow, and about the deep, aching loneliness of having a family that would never understand me. After that day, we started seeing each other more and more. We didn't just meet at that coffee shop. We found other simple places, the park near my house, an old dusty bookstore out in the suburbs. Julia wasn't like Owen. She didn't need expensive meals or flashy nights out. She seemed to cherish the real moments, like the time we sat on a park bench eating sandwiches and laughing so hard we could barely breathe over some stupid story I told. And slowly I started to realize that what I felt for her wasn't just friendship, it was something more. something deeper, a connection unlike anything I had ever experienced before. One evening we were walking along the banks of the Cuyahoga River, with the lights of the city glittering on the dark water. She reached out and took my hand. It wasn't a big, dramatic gesture. It was just a light, easy touch, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Liam," she said, turning to look me in the eye, "I have no idea where any of this is going, but I really like being with you. You make me feel safe." I looked back at her, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I wasn't thinking about my family or Owen or any of the pain from the past. All I could think about was her and how being with her made me want to be a better man. "I like being with you too, Julia," I said, and we just stood there for a long time under the glow of the city lights, not needing to say anything else. My relationship with Julia blossomed in that quiet, unassuming way, but I knew it couldn't stay that simple forever. Owen, with an ego the size of a downtown skyscraper, was not the kind of person to just let things go. And just as I'd expected, a few weeks after Julia and I started getting serious, he found out. I was under the sink in my kitchen one evening, wrestling with a stubborn pipe, when my phone started buzzing over and over on the counter. I wiped my hands on my jeans, picked it up, and was greeted by Owen's voice, practically spitting with rage. "Liam, you son of a bitch, how dare you steal my girlfriend? Who the hell do you think you are?" I sighed, making an effort to keep my own voice calm. "Owen, relax. Julia broke up with you. That was her choice. I didn't steal anyone. Don't you play innocent with me," he screamed, his voice cracking. "I saw the pictures of you two online, that dumpy little coffee shop, the park, acting like you're some kind of romantic hero. You planned this, didn't you? You just wanted to ruin my life because you've always been jealous of me." I sank down onto one of my kitchen chairs, rubbing my temples. "Owen, I'm not jealous of you. I have never wanted your life. Julia and we just connected. She didn't want to be with you anymore, and you know exactly why." Owen let out a harsh, ugly laugh, his voice dripping with spite. "Oh, I see how it is. It's because you have money now, right? You flashed your cash and bought her off just to make yourself feel better than me. But you're still just a plumber, Liam. She's going to get tired of you eventually." His words still had the power to hurt, but I refused to let him see it. "If you really believe that money is the only thing that makes people stick around, then that's your problem, not mine," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Julia doesn't need my money, and I don't need to prove anything to you, so leave her alone, Owen." He slammed the phone down in my ear. I just sat there for a minute, staring at the blank screen. I knew this wasn't over. Owen never let anything go, especially when he felt like he'd been disrespected. And I was right. A few days later, my mom called. Her voice was thin and shaky, like she was on the verge of tears. "Liam, how could you do this to your brother? Owen says you stole his girlfriend, that you're trying to destroy his life. You're his older brother. How could you be so cruel?" My hand tightened around the phone. It felt like I was right back where I started. "Mom, I didn't steal anybody. Julia broke up with Owen because she was unhappy with him. We didn't even start seeing each other until after that. Have you even once considered asking me for my side of the story, or do you just automatically believe everything Owen tells you?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, she said, "Owen is in a lot of pain, Liam. He says you've betrayed the entire family. I just want you to make this right. You need to talk to Julia. Tell her to go back to him. We need to keep this family together." A short, harsh laugh escaped my lips. I couldn't help it. "Keep the family together?" I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "You want me to throw away my own happiness just to make Owen feel better? You haven't once asked me how I feel about any of this. You have never ever taken my side. I'm done, Mom. I'm tired of it. I'm not going to do it." My mom started sobbing on the other end of the line, but this time I didn't back down. I love her, but I couldn't spend the rest of my life twisting myself into knots just to please a family that only ever wanted me to give in and shut up. I ended the call, and for the first time I didn't feel a single pang of guilt. Owen didn't give up. He started a smear campaign on social media, making vague posts about betrayal and sending messages to mutual friends claiming I had manipulated Julia just to get revenge on him. A couple of people asked me about it, but I didn't bother to respond. I knew the truth, and more importantly, Julia knew the truth. But the constant pressure from my family, the endless stream of Owen's lies, it started to get to me. I didn't doubt Julia, but I started to doubt myself. Was I really good enough for her? Should I just walk away from it all to make the drama stop? I confessed all of this to Julia one night. She just took my hand, her eyes flashing with a fierce light. "Liam, don't you dare let him get to you," she said, her voice firm. "This is what he does. He's trying to make you feel guilty because for the first time in your life, you're standing up for yourself. You haven't done anything wrong. I am with you. I chose you." Her words were like a clean, fresh wind, blowing away all the dark, suffocating thoughts that had been clouding my mind. I pulled her into a hug, and in that moment I knew. No matter what Owen tried to do, no matter what lies he told, I would not let him ruin this. A full year has passed since that day in my living room, the day I finally stood up to my family and told them no. A year since Owen stormed out, his face a mask of rage, and my parents trailed silently behind him. A year since I closed my front door on a lifetime of expectations that were never really mine to carry. A year since Julia took my hand by the river, with the city lights dancing in her eyes, and I realized I had finally found the one thing I had been searching for all along. Not my family's approval, but the love of someone who saw me for who I truly was. Today I'm standing in a small room in the back of an old church in the suburbs of Cleveland, looking at my reflection in a dusty mirror. I'm wearing a simple gray suit. I catch my own eye and smile, not because I look particularly handsome. I'll never have Owen's slick hair or his movie star charm. But because for the first time in my life, I feel completely and utterly at peace. Today is my wedding day. It's the day Julia and I start our life together, and I feel a sense of calm that I never thought was possible. I don't feel like I have to prove anything to anyone ever again. But even standing here in this moment of pure, unadulterated joy, a small, sad part of me can't help but feel a pang of loss. I sent invitations to my parents and to Owen. I didn't do it because I thought they would come. I did it because I needed to close that chapter of my life for good. I knew they wouldn't be here, but I still had 3 empty chairs set up in the front row of the church. They're a silent reminder of the family I once wished for and of the hard lessons I had to learn about letting go. Our wedding is nothing like what you see in the magazines. There's no fancy hotel ballroom, no string quartet, no towering floral arrangements. Julia and I wanted something simple, something that felt like us. The little church is filled with the warm glow of string lights, and the air smells like fresh pine from the branches we used to decorate the pews. The only other flowers are a few simple pots of white daisies that Julia picked out herself at the farmer's market last weekend. The only people here are our closest friends, Mark, the guy I've worked alongside on plumbing jobs for the last 5 years. Emily, my best friend from high school who never misses an opportunity to make fun of my work clothes, and a few of Julia's co-workers from the office, who still can't quite believe that a plumber knows more about the stock market than they do. And then Julia walks down the aisle and my breath catches in my throat. She's wearing a simple ivory dress that ends just below her knees, and she has her brown hair down, held back on one side with a small pearl clip. She doesn't have on a lot of makeup or any flashy jewelry. She is beautiful in the way I have always seen her, real, strong, and shining from the inside out. When she reaches the altar and takes my hand in hers, it feels like the rest of the world just fades away, leaving only the two of us. The minister begins to speak, but I can barely hear the words. All I can see are Julia's eyes. My mind is filled with memories of our first coffee date, our long walks by the river, the countless nights we spent curled up on my old sofa, talking for hours about the future with the breathless excitement of two people who knew they were building a dream together. When it's my turn to say my vows, I take both of her hands in mine, my voice thick with emotion. "Julia," I begin, "you saw me when I felt invisible. You didn't just help me believe in myself with numbers and charts. You did it with the way you looked at me, the way you always reminded me that I was enough, just as I was. I can't promise you the moon and the stars, but I can promise you everything I am. My love, my loyalty, and a life that we will build side by side." Julia smiles, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Liam," she says, her voice soft but sure, "you taught me that true happiness isn't about having the best of everything, but about making the best of everything. I'm not choosing you because of what you have. I'm choosing you because you are the kindest, most decent man I have ever known. And I promise to stand with you always." We slide the simple silver rings onto each other's fingers. There are no diamonds, no fancy engravings, but they hold the weight of all our promises. When the minister finally says the words, "You may now kiss the bride," I pull Julia into my arms and kiss her as our friends cheer and laugh around us. Just for a second, though, my eyes drift to the back of the church, to the 3 chairs I had reserved for my family. They are, as I knew they would be, still empty. A shadow of the old sadness passes through me, but it's gone as quickly as it came, chased away when Julia squeezes my hand and whispers, "You okay?" I look down at her and smile, better than I've ever been. After the wedding, Julia and I bought a new house. It's not a mansion, just a simple 2-story place with a backyard big enough for me to plant a few apple trees like the ones I had in my yard when I was a kid. I still work as a plumber. I still drive my old pickup. But now, when I come home at the end of the day, Julia is there, and that makes all the difference in the world. My story doesn't have a dramatic ending. There's no big splashy victory, no satisfying moment of revenge. It just ends with a quiet sense of peace, something I spent a very long time believing I would never deserve. I've learned that happiness isn't something other people can give you. It comes from being honest with yourself, from living a life that feels right in your own skin. Julia is the living, breathing proof of that. She's the one who reminds me every day that real love isn't about impressing people. It's about respect and kindness and a deep, quiet understanding. Sometimes when I'm out in our backyard looking at the little apple trees we just planted, I think about my parents and Owen. I think about those 3 empty chairs at our wedding, but the anger is gone now. All I feel is a faint hope that maybe someday they'll figure out what I now know to be true. That family isn't just about blood. It's about the people you choose to show up for day after day. It's about the people who truly, unconditionally care. I turn and head back toward the house. Through the kitchen window, I can see Julia humming to herself as she makes a pot of coffee. She looks up, sees me, and her whole face lights up with a smile. "Ready for a new day, love?" she calls out. I nod, stepping inside to wrap my arms around her from behind. "Ready," I say, burying my face in her hair. "With you, I'm always ready."